7 common reasons for poor results. Now, I see these all the time in the people that I'm coaching. These are the most common reasons that people are having issues with their training. So the first one is doing the same training but expecting different results. And if you're doing the same thing and expecting different results, then obviously you need to change something. And that's really important to make sure that the training that you're doing is relevant. So the next one is incorrect match between training and the outcome. So I see a lot of people doing this. This is one of the really big ones, is that they're doing training, they're training hard, but the training that they're doing doesn't match the outcome that they want. It's not the right type of training for the events that they're doing. And to give you an example of that, I had a client midway through this year training for the Peaks Challenge Falls Creek. He was doing a super high intensity training program that didn't have a lot of base and a lot of hill climbing in it. And that training program would probably be ideal if he was racing in criteriums or something like that last about an hour. Now, the next one is training is not structured or progressive. This is a biggie as well. People go out and they train hard, they ride their bikes, they go out with their mates. But the problem is that it's not really structured and it's not progressive. They're not progressively loading themselves up. They're not progressively working through a structured program or a plan. And there's really very little direction to their program. I mean, obviously they're riding the bikes, they're putting time in, but it's not efficient. And that's the next one, not training efficiently. So, doing junk kilometres. They're out there training hard, riding their bike, but they're not getting any progress with it because the training is an incorrect match between what they want to do and what their outcome is. So the next one is poor development of technique. This is a real biggie. Cycling is really like swimming in that a lot of it's about technique. In our programs, we actually spend a lot of time working on functional strength on and off the bike. We work a lot on developing really good technique, and that means that you become a lot more efficient with your riding, and I'll cover that off a little bit later on as well. Then poor focus on leg or core strength. And this is a real biggie. Now, in today's society, a lot of the athletes that we're coaching are desk-bound, so they're behind a desk all day, or they're working in jobs where they're not very active. So they don't have the sort of strength that we used to see 20, 30 years ago. So we actually in 2007, we developed a program, I'll talk a little bit about it later on, a functional strength training program that we used in our remote coaching programs that we were dishing out to the cyclists that we were coaching to enable them to get up to speed on their leg and their core strength. And this is really important. And these videos are fantastic. So I'll talk a little bit about that later on and how we do that. And the next one is poor balance. And that is, too much focus on either base or speed or, poor inconsistency. There's no building it. So to give you an example of that, I'm an endurance athlete. I love going out for 3-4 hour rides. Love it. But what I know, for me to build strength and speed, I also need to do some specific interval training on an indoor trainer for an hour. And that hour that I spend on an indoor trainer will give me greater results than if I was to just go out and do those base endurance. So it's really working on making sure that you've got a good balance and ensuring that you're covering off specific exercises that you need to do to develop your fitness for the event. The next thing I want to talk about is how we get fit. And this is really important, overload. When people understand how this works, the kind of light bulbs start coming on with them. So I wanted to briefly touch on this. This is how we get fit. And I'll just read this out. Improvement comes from training through a proper periodized training plan which provides progressive overload and recovery. Now, I've put the recovery in asterisks because the recovery is really important. And the understanding around this is that the training load is a stimulus. So when you're training really hard, it stimulates your body to get fit. But it's actually in the recovery that the adaptation happens. So you need both. Recovery is really important to your training. And in recovery, it's either you're doing active recovery, like low intensity efforts, or you're doing, you're sleeping or having rest days. So that's really, really important to understand that. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is how our training structure and programs work. So we work on this fundamental base, strength and speed. And this is really, really important to understand. And I'll talk a little bit about high intensity training as well, because I think it's important for people to understand what it is between building base strength and then high intensity trainings. High intensity trainings like adding nitro to an engine, to a car. So it makes the car go fast. And that's what we want. We want fast cars. But the problem with high intensity training is it doesn't actually change the size of the engine. What we do is we work on base and strength first. It enables us to build a bigger engine first before we add the high intensity training at the end or adding the nitro. Imagine you've got a small car with nitro in it. Without the nitro, it's going to struggle over hills and those sort of things, and you've got to work it pretty hard. But with the nitro, it's going to get over those hills a lot better, but you've really got to stress it to do that. Whereas if you were to then jump in an even bigger car, a big car, right, with a big engine in it, then it's like it's not going to have any problems struggling over those hills and things like the little car has. And then if you were to add nitro to that car, it'd like go even faster. So that's our philosophy around our training, is to work on building a really good foundation first. So when you do add the speed training at the end, the high intensity training, that you get an even better result. And the other great thing about that is that it's sustainable. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on. So let's get into it. So aerobic-based training develops cardiovascular fitness. Aerobic-based training helps build the size of the engine. So it helps with all aspects of your riding, hill climbing, riding along flat, doing time trials, racing, all those sort of things. It really helps. And what we do is we spend a lot of time working on aerobic-based because it's really important. It builds their engine, makes it bigger. So it means that they don't have to strain so hard to do the same sort of effort as what they were doing 3 months ago or 6 months ago. It's a really important foundation. A lot of people ask me the question, which is better, high-intensity training or base training? I go, well, actually, you need both, and you need the timing to be right. So it's no sense doing high-intensity training at the beginning of your program. You've got to do base training first. The other great thing is that it prevents injury later on. So you build the foundation so your body's able to take the load, and that's really important. Okay, so it's obviously usually missing from high-intensity programs, and it's absolutely required for endurance events. If you are on a high-intensity training program and you're doing a big endurance event that's going to last longer than a couple of hours, then the high-intensity training is not going to help. And there's a classic, you're always reading studies. Here's this person doing super high-intensity, it's a scientific research. The guys are doing super high-intensity training, and their results over a 20-kilometre time trial is better than people not doing high-intensity training. Well, yeah, that's true. We all know that high-intensity training gives you a lift. That's a given. But the problem is that if you're doing a 3-hour event, 20 minutes is not much use to you. You're going to be great for the first 20 minutes of that event, but you're not going to be any good for the rest of it. So this is where we talk about aligning the training with the sort of event that you're training for. Now, the important thing about aerobic base is that it's developed slowly and it's lost slowly. We actually build sustainability in the training programs, and I'll talk a little bit about that with the high-intensity training later on. So the next one is strength and conditioning. Now, I'm going to talk about on the bike and off the bike strength and conditioning, and it's important to understand the two different things. So off the bike strength training is done off the bike. So you do it using weights. The training programs that we have for strength training off the bike, you can do at home. And then there's on the bike strength training, and that's specific drills that we do to develop muscle fibers to be able to work with the loads that they would expect out in a specific ride. So, for example, one of the rides that we're doing has a very big steep climb at the end of the ride. So we need to develop the athlete to make sure that they're capable of riding at 60 RPM for over an hour or so on that steep climb at the end of the event. So that's really important that we include that in the training. Now, the other thing we need to understand around strength training, and this is specifically related to off the bike, is the distinction between explosive and sustained power. A lot of people, they think, oh yeah, strength training, that means I go to the gym and I get myself onto the machines and I do these really explosive efforts that develop strength, and that'll help me climb hills better. Well, it won't. The reality is that that sort of training is important if you like, for example, a sprinter, where you need to develop super high explosive power. You go to the gym and you see this personal trainer, and it seems that their primary goal in life is to make sure that when you leave the gym that you're not able to walk out of it, that you have to crawl out of the gym. And one of the big issues around that is that how is that going to affect the rest of your week? You're going to have you're wrecked. You're going to have sore legs. You're not going to be able to achieve the training that you need to do. The training that you've just done in the gym is probably going to be this explosive training that's only going to help you for sprints, and it's not going to help you for sustained hill climbing. So it's really important that the off-the-bike strength training conditioning program needs to be relevant to the cycling that you're doing. Now, I'm not discounting explosive training. That's really important if you're a sprinter. But if you want to improve your time trial, or you want to improve your hill climbing, where you're putting out sustained power, we need to work on the foundations of strength and conditioning and do the training that's specific for those sort of events. Now, a lot of high-intensity training programs don't have the strength and conditioning component in them. On our programs, they have our functional strength training that we do off the bike, and then we do specific strength training drills on the bike as well. Now, the great thing about strength training is that it's developed slowly and also lost slowly as well. So it means that the training that we do last year helps you with the training that you do this year. It's sustainable. It's all part of building that bigger engine too. So when I talked about the aerobic and the strength training that we do, it builds a bigger engine. So it makes it easier for the engine to ride over those, challenging parts of the rides. Now we talk about speed, high-intensity training. There's no doubt, like I mentioned, that high-intensity training gives you a lift. Regardless of where you are of your training, if you go out and do high-intensity training for 6 weeks, you'll get better, guaranteed. But the problem is that if you do that on not a very big base, then you can only get a small lift. You're only putting nitro into a little engine. So it's much better to develop a bigger engine and then add nitro to it. Now, the other thing about high-intensity training is that it's not sustainable. You develop it really quickly, but you also lose it really quickly. Because one of the things about high-intensity training is that you can only go so far with it. After about 6 to 12 weeks is about the maximum you can do high-intensity training for, and then you have to back it off and do base training. And that's a well-known fact. So if you look at the last thing I mentioned on here, poor base and strength equals a poor speed lift. If you've done no base and no strength training and you put high-intensity training into your program, you're going to get a lift, but you're not going to get as good a lift as if you built it up first. So that's really, really important. So the next thing I wanted to cover off is where to go from here. Like, you've probably got a whole lot of questions around, right, well, what do I need to do? Now that I know, there's a whole lot of stuff that I need to do. So I just wanted to show you our members area, and this is where the next step is if you're interested in taking training further. So what I'll do is I'll jump into it and I'll show you around what we've got available to our clients. So here we are in the members area. This is on the website. This is a live website at the moment. And once you've signed up, you get access to all this content, and I'll go through it very quickly. So the first thing is that you can start your training program. In the start, you can select or switch, download, and then ask questions. So I'll just show you. This is where you start your training program. We've got these 12-week coaching programs on. We've got aerobic base builders, hill climbers, time trialists, crib racing, road racing. And we've also got event-specific programs. And we've actually got a maintainer program that I'm going to be releasing fairly soon as well that's not detailed here. And that's for people that are training off-season, so like during winter and stuff like that. Just keep them fit. It means that when they start training again, that they're in a really, really good position. So that's where you can start, and you just select the program here. And what will happen is after you've selected that and press the submit button, you'll get a weekly program that's detailed, and in it it's got, you know, the day of the week. This is just an example, the indoor training session that you're doing on which day, right? And then some video content. So there's video or a PDF document that goes with this, and there's links in the email that you get that shows you how to do it. And then, you know, there's recovery rides, and then some information about what you need to do on the weekend. And also, here's the functional strength training. So that's what a general program looks like. It's got some targets here. Now, this is obviously one example. We've got different types of programs for different athletes, depending on how much time they've got available. This is a fairly aggressive program that, you know, requires this particular week's looking about 10 hours a week, and about 320 kilometres of riding. So, you know, some people are not like that. Our aerobic base builder program 1 has a lot less hours in it, and our maintainer program will actually have only 4 to 6 hours of training a week, so a lot less training required for those programs. Once you've selected it, then you download the relevant material. So there's introductory documents. When you click on that link, you go to the introductory documents, and these documents you just can download directly from the website. And then the indoor cycle training videos are available. So for example, if it's that one you mentioned, I think the hill climber, then you just click on the hill climber link, and that'll go to a page that has the indoor training video that you can play online. And then you can download the versions of it. So if you've got a mobile device or a computer you want to play it on, a lot of people like that offline, they just download the electronic version of that and just upload it to your iPhone or your iPad and watch it there, or your computer. And then in that training session, I'm actually riding with you through the session. So it's like I'm almost there in the room with you. And you notice that people are asking questions about that particular exercise. So, and you'll notice that there's stuff happening here as well. This is our forum. So you notice that people are asking questions about all sorts of stuff in the training, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Now, the functional strength training program, which is in the program as well, we'll just click on one of these links. Again, it's exactly the same. You know, this is functional strength training that we developed specifically for people that can do